3,000 years ago, King David built himself a magnificent palace here in his new capital, Jerusalem.
Of the city that the Bible calls Dibon. This is the ancient capital of the Moabites.
Scientists have unearthed what they believe to be the long-lost tomb of King David, which was lost for ages. Throughout centuries, countless legends have resurfaced, bringing forth speculations regarding the location of King David's tomb and proving the existence of the Davidic dynasty as written in the Bible. Recently, a site believed to house King David's tomb was found, with artifacts related to him. But where was the tomb located, and what shocking objects were found? Join us as we talk about how scientists finally opened the tomb of biblical King David, which was sealed for thousands of years. Scientists reveal King David's sealed tomb. In 1913, a man named Ramon Willie was the first archaeologist to excavate in the most ancient part of Jerusalem. It was significant that he was both an archaeologist and a Jew. As an archaeologist, he knew how to dig, and as a Jew, he used the Bible as a treasure map in his quest to find the tomb of King David. In 1993, a surprising discovery put an end to the debate surrounding the existence of King David, who was a key biblical figure. The discovery came in the form of a stone known as the Tel Dan Stele, which was dated back to the 9th century BCE. The description on the slab, written in Aramaic, which means House of David, gives evidence of the existence of the David dynasty. Before this finding, scientists had raised doubt about the historical accuracy of the monarchy under the name of David, though he was quite prominent in the Hebrew Bible. However, the question of the location of his tomb has raised curiosity and speculation. Recently, a French Jewish archaeologist has claimed to found the exact burial site of King David, uncovering several artifacts in the process. These findings sent shockwaves around the world. Evidences of David's tomb site. Although David's death marked the end of an era, signifying the passing of a legendary figure, centuries later, a new story began as historians and biblical scholars searched for the tomb of David. Now, after decades of search, the tomb was finally unearthed within a long-sealed cave, reigniting the old-age debate surrounding his existence. But why is finding the tomb of King David a big deal? According to the Old Testament, King David was a prominent king buried within the city of David. The tomb was believed to be the final resting place, not only of King David, but other kings of Judah after his reign. So archaeologists and scientists have engaged in the quest to uncover his tomb, but it has been shrouded in mystery and controversy, which lead to some speculating it might have been destroyed during the various stages of Jerusalem's development into a modern city, while some question the very existence of King David. To value the discovery of David's tomb, it's important to first explore the archaeological proof of his existence. One of the primary sources of evidence regarding King David's evidence comes from historical texts and inscriptions. The Old Testament provides detailed accounts of David's life and reign, offering valuable insights into his existence as an important figure in ancient Israelite history. These texts describe his rise from a shepherd boy to a powerful king, his victories in battles, and his establishment of Jerusalem as the capital city. While the religious nature of these texts has led some to question their historical accuracy, they nevertheless serve as important sources for understanding the life and times of King David. Another crucial piece of evidence is the Tel Dan Stele, an ancient stone slab discovered in northern Israel. The inscriptions on the stele, dating back to the 9th century BCE, refer to the House of David. This proof was found by an archaeologist, Abraham Bryan, in 1993. Another shocking evidence was made in 1868 in the land of Moab, now modern-day Jordan. It was the Stele of Mesha. The finding is the latest breakthrough in a decades-old controversy within the archaeological world on whether the basalt stone slab, often known as the Moabite stone, mentions King David, the biblical legend. The stele, discovered in 1868 near the Jordanian town of Diban, known as Dibon in biblical times, east of the Dead Sea, is written with a narrative of King Mesha's military victories against his foes, including Israel, as described in the Bible's second book of Kings. However, immediately after its discovery, the approximately 2,800-year-old stone slab was split into many pieces, making it difficult to understand the ancient writing, despite a papier-mâché imprint or squeeze of the inscription. The stele was finally restored and is now on exhibit at the Louvre in Paris. It is approximately 3 feet tall, 2 feet broad, and has 34 lines of inscription, with a possible House of David reference appearing on the 31st line. This slab gave a stronger credibility to the proof of the existence of King David and his reign as contained in the Hebrew Bible. It also entails his war and victory against the country Moab. The text also mentions King Mesha. The Moabite stone is one of the most significant archaeological findings related to the Bible. It is one of the archaeological finds that Christian apologists like to use to prove the Bible is true. It was discovered in 1868 about 15 miles east of the Dead Sea and is a 9th century BC. The stone monument was created by King Mesha of the Moabites, who is mentioned numerous times in the Bible and is the Israelites' continuous rival. The events depicted are somewhat similar to those recounted in 2 Kings chapter 3. According to 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 4, Mesha was subjugated by Ahab. Then, when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, Joram, Ahab's son, then launched an attack against Moab. When the Moabites approached Israel's camp, the Israelites rose and killed the Moabites. The Moabites ran from before them. They went out into the land and slaughtered the Moabites, according to 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 24. In other words, ancient Israel suppressed the Moabites under the rule of King Omri, who reigned from 885 till 874 BC, King Ahab, who ruled from 874 till 853 BC, and King Joram, who ruled from 854 till 841 BC. The Moabite stone contains a similar timeline. Omri, king of Israel, had oppressed Moab for many days because Chemosh was angry with his land. His son succeeded him, and he also declared, "I will oppress Moab." Though the son is not named, he is most likely Omri's offspring, specifically Joram. This point of contact is consistent with the Moabite stone in 2 Kings chapter 3. At the same time, the Moabite stone makes no mention of Omri, Ahab, or Joram's military efforts against the Moabites. Similarly, 2 Kings does not explain how Mesha seized Israelite territory. The stone also provides a comparable timeline of when Omri, king of Israel, had suppressed Moab. Furthermore, 2 Kings chapter 13 verse 20 says further about the Moabites. Elisha died, and they buried him. In the spring of that year, a party of Moabites routinely entered the region. If Elisha died around the beginning of the 8th century BC, it suggests that Mesha successfully annexed certain regions of Israel during his reign, sometime between 840 BC and 800 BC, though Moabite incursions into Israelite territory after Mesha's reign were of a small scale and led by groups of Moabites rather than the entire nation of Moab. The Mesha stele recounts Israel's occupation of regions that King Mesha considered to be part of Moab. It also honors the Moabite king's military achievements and construction undertakings. Several more biblical names and events are mentioned on the stele with remarkable precision. The inscription is 34 lines long and contains approximately 260 words. It is nicely carved in Old Hebrew and Phoenician letters. It was written in 860 BC under the name Mesha, king of Moab. The translation for the first 2/3 of the inscription is as follows. I am Mesha, son of Chemosh, king of Moab and Dibonite. My father reigned over Moab for 30 years, and I succeeded him as king, and I built this high place for Chemosh, the high place of deliverance, since he had freed me from all that assailed me, and helped me see my desire upon all my foes. And the men of Had had occupied the land of Ashtaroth for a long time, and the king of Israel had built up Ataroth for himself. And I fought against the city and took it, and I slew all the people from the city, a sight for the eyes of Chemosh and Moab. And Chemosh said to me, "Go take Nebo against Israel." And I went by night and fought against it from the break of dawn until the moon. And I took it and slew those that were in it, 7,000 men and boys, women, girls, and maidservants. Foe to Ashtar Chemosh I had devoted it. And I took from there the vessels of Yahweh and brought them before Chemosh. And the king of Israel had fortified Jaz and occupied it while he was at war with me. And Chemosh drove him out from before me. And I took Moab 200, all its chiefs, and I attracted Jaz and took it to add it to Dibon. Mesha goes on to describe repairing and reinforcing cities that legitimately belonged to Moab, as well as erecting a palace for himself and water reservoirs. Exciting new technology enables the re-examination of ancient objects, yielding far more information than previously. The analysis of the Mesha stele adds to the evidence that King David existed and that the Bible is a reliable historical account. This is the second direct reference to the House of David from the period of the Israelite monarchy. The archaeological world is generally suspicious of David, with many believing he never existed as the ruler of a mighty Israel as described in the Bible, making this discovery so significant. The stele contains numerous lines of Aramaic relating to the person who murdered Jehoram of Israel, Ahab's son and king of the house of David. This is described in 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 24. Given the limited size of the city of David and the fact that Tanakh and Chazal provide very exact details of the burial site's location, French archaeologist, Egyptologist Raymond Weil searched for the tomb in 1913. This was the first archaeological expedition led by a Jew, with money from a Jewish sponsor, Baron Edmund de Rothschild, and at a Jewish location in the land of Israel. He arrived at the city of Jerusalem on the 24th of October 1913, when the city was still part of the vast Ottoman Empire. One of his initial actions was to carefully map out the city, marking the location of its most ancient district, the city of David. To navigate his quest, Weil relied on two specific verses from the Bible. The first verse in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 10 reads, "So David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David." And Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 15 to 18. Shallun, the son of Kol-Hoseh, leader of the district of Mizpah, repaired the fountain gate. He built it, covered it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars, and repaired the wall of the pool of Shelah by the king's garden, as far as the stairs that go down from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah the son of Azbuk, leader of half the district of Beth-zur, made repairs as far as the place in front of the tombs of David, to the man-made pool, and as far as the house of the mighty. After him the Levites, under Rahum the son of Bani, made repairs. Next to him Hashabiah, leader of half the district of Keilah, made repairs for his district. After him their brethren, under Bavai the son of Henadad, leader of the other half of the district of Keilah, made repairs. The above biblical verse provided further clues about the location of the tomb. Weil, whose full report was not published until 1947, was successful in discovering major items, maybe the king's graves themselves. In a second expedition between 1923 and 1924, Weil uncovered 8 man-made cave-like structures known as tombs, as well as a 9th cave. He named these caves T1 to T9 and declared that the most momentous, T1, was King David's tomb. T1 is a long tunnel having characteristics of an ancient burial cave. Unfortunately, the caves were exploited as a quarry throughout the Roman period, which made restoration difficult. Weil's thesis was initially accepted by the archaeological world, but many archaeologists now disagree with it. They believe that the caverns he discovered are not identical to other First Temple period graves, and that it is not certain that these buildings date from King David's reign. They propose that these well-planned buildings were water cisterns or cellars from the Second Temple period. Those who continue to accept Weil's claim contend that no additional cisterns like those have ever been discovered, and that their design is not perfect for that function. Weil's supporters acknowledge that there are no other 10th century BCE tombs known in Jerusalem, and that Weil's findings differ from the several known Jerusalem 8th century tombs. However, a precise match cannot be expected because the documented 8th century graves were not those of monarchs or royalty, and the tombs in question were constructed 200 years later. He also found 2 hallways half excavated onto the bedrock. He thought that these could be the ruins of a biblical royal tomb, although he provided no evidence beyond the halls to support this claim. He discovered the chamber tombs of the Davidic rulers, which date back to around the Iron Age. This finding revealed the site of King David's tomb. He located a well along the northern wall, which was known as the Pool of Siloam.
This is the most probable place where David's bones rested.
As a result, most researchers disregarded Weil's findings. Some speculated that these halls are part of an ancient Roman construction complex. However, modern archaeologist Norma Franklin's research revealed connections to royal burial rooms, implying that Weil may have been correct after all. The halls discovered by Weil are located in the city of David National Park. They can be reached via a footpath from the entrance, approximately midway between Area G and the Pool of Siloam. The lack of strong evidence for David's burial brought a new belief that his tomb was really on Mount Zion. The site is still cherished by Jews today, despite the biblical unequivocal indication that David was buried in the city of David, specifically at Mount Zion. Another evidence suggests that the location currently known as Mount Zion was not part of populated Jerusalem during King David's reign, 10th century BCE, and he was not buried there. Rather, King David was buried in the southeastern section of Jerusalem's actual Old City, which is located south of the Temple Mount and Dung Gate, and is now known as Ir David, the City of David. Whether the peak of Mount Zion is King David's real burial place, or was utilized by his descendants, the location has become sanctified and is a popular pilgrimage destination in Jerusalem. It has its own authenticity in the Bible from the Bible verses Welly used to navigate his way. Citing that King David was buried in the city of David, the tombs of David. Another discovery related to this alternative evidence is the stepped stone structure. Archaeologists discovered the stepped stone structure on the eastern slope of the hill in the city of David. The stepped stone structure depicted in the photograph above appears to be a wall over 60 feet tall. The stepped stone structure was constructed on top of terraces, or boxes. These terraces were small walled areas joined by shared walls and filled with stone and mud. After the terraces were installed, the visible huge wall was used to cover the space. This structure, believed to have been built during the reign of King David, has been interpreted by scholars as part of the royal complex mentioned in the Bible. Furthermore, ancient Jewish sources, such as Talmud and the writings of Josephus, consistently associated the tomb of King David to the western side of Mount Zion. These clues, which have been revered among Jewish traditions, strengthen the evidence of the location of the tomb of King David. Though Wellis's hypothesis regarding the tomb location has faced criticisms, its nature of objective remains potent. A renowned archaeologist, Kathleen Kenyon, sheds light on Wellis's proposed site, describing the unusual features found by him. These characteristics consist of 2 adjacent rock-cut tunnels, distinct from any observed cisterns, although the presence of plaster suggests their prior use. Kenyon states that there is no concrete evidence to support the idea that the tunnels were the much sought-after tomb of David. Instead, she suggests they were just simply cisterns. Although she admits that her view is purely theoretical and lacks evidence too, just as Weil I identified the tunnels as the royal tombs. Other theories have been proposed by scholars speculating that the tunnels might be storage rooms or ancient wine cellars. With different views and sides to these tunnels, they all agree on a point that the tunnels are not the final resting place of King David. They arrived at this conclusion due to three proposition rudiments. 1. The structures are unlikely to be tombs. Second, if they were tombs, they would not be old enough to be associated with King David. Finally, even if there were ancient tombs, that simplicity is not aligned with how exquisite royal tombs were hewed and decorated. In sight of these arguments, the upper opinion among critics is that Welly allowed his personal biases to influence his observations, leading to a huge misinterpretation. However, recent scholars have started to doubt these conclusions and reevaluate the funding of Welly. Is it possible Welly was correct thus far? These scholars are challenging the prevailing story, urging a reconsideration of the evidence and reassessment of the conclusion drawn so far. Life and times of King David. David was born about 1040 BC into an obscure family in the town of Bethlehem, in the Hebrew tribe of Judah. He was Ruth's great-grandson and the youngest of Jesse's 8 sons. As a boy, David's father assigned him to guard the family sheep. During this time, David gained considerable skill in music and fighting, as it was customary for him to kill any lion or bear that disturbed the herd. The shepherd years were abruptly interrupted when Samuel, Israel's famous judge and prophet, arrived in Bethlehem to offer a sacrifice. Samuel evaluated Jesse's sons before summoning David, who was anointed as the future king of Israel in front of his family. God rejected Saul, the ruler of Israel at the time, due to his disobedience. Saul began to feel spiritually oppressed, and his court supporters suggested a musician. David entered the palace to perform music for the troubled king, and he swiftly became the monarch's armor-bearer. David switched between life at court and life among the sheep. He eventually arrived near the conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines. When David heard a Philistine warrior, Goliath, insult the God of Israel, he was determined to take action. He killed the monster, severed his head, and was instantly lauded as a hero throughout the country. Saul was not pleased with David's popularity. Even though Saul appointed him as a captain of the army, the king became jealous and eventually tried to assassinate David with his javelin. However, Saul's son Jonathan befriended David, and David married Saul's daughter Michal as the king plotted his death. Even as he continued to fight successfully against the Philistines, Jonathan and Michal saved David's life. David eventually fled the court, first to Nob and then southwest to the territory of the Philistines. He visited the country of Moab in the southeast, leaving his parents in the king's care, and then settled in Judah's dry southern desert. Saul pursued him with armed soldiers several times, but David escaped, even sparing Saul's life when he could have killed him. David developed a connection with Achish, the Philistine king of Gath. Achish made him lord of the city of Ziklag, from which David proceeded to launch raids against Israel's adversaries. Eventually, the Philistines prepared to wage war against Saul. While David was away from Ziklag, a party of Amalekite warriors devastated the settlement and took David and his supporters' property as well as their families. David answered by pursuing them into the desert, defeating them, and returning with all the trophies of war. With Ishbosheth deposed, Israel's leaders convened and anointed David as king of a united country. David's reign over the 12 tribes lasted 33 years. He captured Jerusalem from the non-Hebrew Jebusites and renamed it the City of David. He reconstructed this city, also known as Zion, and established diplomatic connections with Hiram, the king of Tyre to the north. David continued his war against the Philistines and took the Ark of God into the City of David. David wanted to do more. He planned to build a temple to God in Jerusalem. However, the prophet Nathan relayed God's message to David that he should not build a temple because he had so much blood on his hands due to his military conquests. Instead, God would favor David, giving him a descendant whose throne would last forever. Following this, David continued to prevail against neighboring nations, including Moab, Syria, and Edom. David's greatest years were cut short when he became entangled in a scandal. While his army was away, David relaxed at the palace. He happened to glance out over Jerusalem and noticed a beautiful woman, Bathsheba, bathing. He led her into the palace and committed adultery with her. To cover up his sin, he finally murdered her husband, one of his most trusted military officers, by sending him out to the forefront of battle and married Bathsheba, who was now widowed. Nathan the prophet reappeared and condemned David for his wrongdoing. David, suddenly overcome with sorrow, repented in grief and cried out to God for mercy. Meanwhile, his child from Bathsheba perished. Later, David had another child with Bathsheba, whom he called Solomon, the future king of Israel. Despite his imperfections, David was regarded as a man after God's own heart, the most religious of all Hebrew rulers, and the standard by which all other Judean kings were compared. The prophecy of a monarch whose throne would last forever spurred messianic aspirations among Jews, which were eventually realized with the arrival of Jesus, the bodily descendant and promised son of David. David is also recognized for his poetry and music. He composed many of the psalms in the Bible, which are being used in worship today. His song was reported to be so exquisite that it could calm King Saul's anxious mind. King David of Israel was a genuine figure who reigned from 1010 to 970 BCE. He was Israel's second monarch, succeeding monarch Saul and unifying the kingdom of Israel. Although his existence was dubious, an archaeologist from Israel was investigating the Syrian border in 1933 when he came upon a fragment of basalt dating back to the 9th century BCE. The inscription was written in Aramaic and said, "House of David." This was the earliest known convincing proof that King David existed. Since then, several researchers have examined King David's life, and several archaeological finds prove his existence. Overall, King David's legacy in the Bible is one of leadership, bravery, and faith in God. His narrative continues to inspire many people, and it is studied and respected by both scholars and believers. King David's tomb isn't the only amazing find, as James Webb Space Telescope has launched its brand new JWST Special Edition phone cases. Get yours by clicking the link on the screen or following the link in the description. What are your opinions on this discovery? Drop them in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more historical content.